Awesome. So we're here talking about anxiety and dating, which is today in our world. I feel like it's more than it used to. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, not at all. When you think of dating, most people say, oh, yeah, two people go out, they have dinner or whatever, have a conversation, and if you like each other, you go out again, right? But that is not at all what dating really is now. Dating is now all sorts of things. It's swipe right as many times as you can to see when you get a bite. It's go on a speed dating. It's blind dating. I mean, there's so many different ways in which we can date, but the key piece is that we've really lost a lot of, or at least we feel like we've lost a lot of that social interaction, that face-to-face connection. And so dating, while that's already something that's scary in itself, it's gotten 10 times more terrifying for many people, because how can you sense a connection when you're either behind a screen or you just don't know what's really sitting in front of you.
I totally agree. I'm like thinking back at my dating days and like dating days. That wasn't too long ago. I've only been with the guy I'm with like 6 months. But it was terrifying. And it was like wanting to get back to that way of just meeting someone organically and going to the library and meeting your potential partner versus, like you said, doing the swipes and then doing the Bumble or whatever it is. It's just crazy how it's changed.
And I was born and raised in Los Angeles, so us Los Angelinos, we say we have a specific culture, but it's really not just us. It's a lot of the millennial generation where we kind of have this thing that we've gotten very terrified of commitment. And instead of even calling it dating, a lot of people say, oh, I'm just talking to this guy or this girl. We're not even willing to say that I'm making a commitment to someone, even if it's just in open dating. So it's really interesting. It's, every little piece of dating, it now feels like a jigsaw puzzle that you're trying to frantically figure out. And people think they've got to get it right, right out the get-go, even if you've had zero training in any shape or form, you've had zero influence, you just have 50 cajillion people and outlets and media telling you to do all these crazy things. And it's like, what the hell do I do? So no wonder we're going to be freaked out about dating and not want to commit to that.
How crazy is that though? Like, it's true as millennials, like you said, we have a hard time connecting, but it's also on the inside, that's what we want the most at the same time.
Yes. Oh my God. It's the number one thing that we probably want. I mean, if a lot of psychological studies that you might look at, they do measurements for social anxiety disorder indexes, things like that. And if you look at research studies, they'll show you of all the things people fear, when you then flip it and ask them, what is it you desire most? There's two main things. They're going to say they want happiness and they want love.
Yeah.
And a lot of those times they'll say that their happiness and their love are interconnected, that when they find the one or find this person, then I'm going to feel happy, which somehow it's a little bit counterproductive, because that in itself stimulates more anxiety. Because look at that pressure, this pedestal that you've now placed for yourself, saying that the only way I can feel any of this is if I find that person, which it sounds completely out of my control.
Yeah. And it's that one person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that you'll stay with forever and ever, and that like, that's all what we want. But it's also, like you said, setting the pressure, like, oh, are you the one? Are you the one? Are you the one? Like, it's.
Yeah. And mostly women tend to do this most because we're very heart-centered, as they might say, or we lead with our emotions more so than a man does. Not to say that men don't at all, but that's the tendency, and that's tied into just how we're raised, how, they call it feminine energy versus masculine, that women are taught to kind of be this way as opposed to a man. But nevertheless, you'll find that in dating, men will find it a lot easier to date multiple women at one time. Whereas a woman, when she meets a man, it's like, oh my God, thank you. I found him. I'm going to latch on to him and pray to God that he's going to stick. And it's never mind the fact of whether or not he's like actually the one. It's just, I've got him. I'm not going to let him go, and I'm going to make it work.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work, it's going to hurt that much more.
Yeah.
And starting over sucks. So this is where men and women kind of need to learn to find, sort of the balance to where women should learn to date more. I've heard it called mantourage dating. I've heard that term kind of flowing around. Just learning to kind of lessen the pressure off yourself and just go out and meet men. I tell my clients, think of it like flipping through a magazine, or like when you're waiting for a bus ride. If you miss one, the other one's going to come around in 15 minutes. It's when you do that, you take the pressure off yourself, because look, I've increased my odds now because there's more and more men coming my way, or women, if that's your preference. And the more you interact and socialize and date other people, the more you figure out, oh, hey, what do I like? What do I not like? When do I really get to be in flow and feel my best versus, when do I get triggered and kind of feel like I'm being walked all over like a doormat? And that's kind of the moment when you really get to finally meet the one, is when you really just get to open yourself up and just take the pressure off.
It's crazy because I look back at my love story with Scott right now. That's exactly how it happened. And it was a way that both of us were kind of like done with dating. We were kind of like, he's like, can I have your number? In my mind, I'm like, it's not going to work. You're far away. I don't, whatever. I'll just talk. And he had the same thought. He was like, oh no, I want something casual. I'm not interested. Like, really, we'll just talk and see. And that's how we were truly ourselves from the beginning, because we had zero expectations in all of this.
Yeah. That's a great point that you bring up. It's, like we said at the beginning, dating comes in all shapes and sizes, just as relationships do. And you don't have to find your person by doing that sort of traditional style of dating. You don't even necessarily have to date. The important piece of the puzzle is the connection that you're establishing. It's not having to put on this preface of, I need to pretend to be something I'm not to hook someone in. So more often than not, you find people in the situation that you just described that they're friends, or they might have met under a different pretense where that wasn't really on the table right away. So you got to be yourself, and eventually you felt the attraction start to rise because, hey, I noticed this person, they're doing all this stuff that I like. I think I'm going to be interested in them.
Yeah.
That's how I met my man. So same thing. I said, true story. I met him and he was clearly interested. I was clearly not in the headspace to be interested. And it got to the point where I was like, back off, you're a weirdo. And it's a perfect example because he really felt the pressure to try to get me interested. And the more he tried, the more I resisted, because it was just, you can't force something to happen, essentially. So men and women, stop trying to control everything. But the second he stopped, the second I was like, you know what? As a person, I actually really enjoyed his company, and we hung out and we talked, and this was over a long period of time. Obviously, this wasn't, this didn't happen overnight. But eventually for us, I went, you know what? There's something there that I didn't see before, because I'm changing as a person. He might have changed. And eventually, we came to each other in a romantic way. So, it just awesome. Develops. Yeah. Thank you. Very excited about it. Years later, here we are. But it was a surprise, because I was the same way. And in my dating years, I would like frantically date, and I literally would have that crazy mindset. Well, I shouldn't say crazy, but for me, it was crazy. I was in the mindset of, okay, I need to be married by 28, and I'm 28 now. It's not, which is fine. I need to be married by this time and have kids by this time, and yada, 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 right? Because my family would say, you're not getting any younger, blah, blah, blah. So I would always date with the mindset that I needed to find the one, which most women do, right? But every time I did that, it was like, such a high stakes game every time. Like a high stakes game, and it felt like no matter what, I was always going to lose, and it's exhausting. And frankly obnoxious.
I know exactly what you mean by that, because that's what I did too. Like, I think, like you said, most women do that. We're all like, okay, we need to find the one. We need to have kids. We need to get married. Like you said, we're getting older, and and that creates sort of a pressure, and it creates also like all these limiting beliefs. Like when I turned 25, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be single forever. I'm 25. I've never really had a relate. And then the limiting beliefs just like started coming out. So I'm assuming that in your clients and the people you talk to, you see a lot of those limiting beliefs come out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's all sorts of limiting beliefs depending on the person.
Yeah.
We all have our own stories that we create. Sometimes people get a little taken aback when we even say the phrase limiting belief, because for some people, it's hard to take on the responsibility of saying, I created this belief for myself.
Yeah.
Because it's something that, this is, we're talking about matters of the heart, right? So it's a very sensitive topic. But nonetheless, we have these stories, as I'll call them, that we've created either by watching other people, our parents, some other figure that you might have been close to, even a friend, or even the media. And either consciously or subconsciously, you've developed a story of either, you need to be married by a certain time, or even you have to be swept off your feet to find the one, or that if it doesn't work out by the time I'm 30, it's never going to happen. I mean, you name it, so on and so forth. There's so many crazy, crazy stories and limiting beliefs that we've created. And I mean, they're really deep rooted because we're talking about love, and we're kind of talking about our forever after in a sense. And it's hard to let go. It's hard to see the other opportunities and possibilities for some people that really believe that.
Yeah. I can totally relate with that. In regards to limiting beliefs, what is the best approach, I'd say, like, to not uncover them? Because I think deep down we all know what our beliefs are. You know what I mean? Like for me, it was I'll be single forever. No one wants to, like, all these stupid things I was telling myself, right? No one wants to date me. I'm not pretty enough. All those typical, most of them were typical female thoughts. But do you think that it's best to like attack the limiting beliefs right away? Or like, what do you think is the best tactic to possibly either remove them or just have a better dating experience overall?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say for people that are starting to explore this for themselves is first to actually, I phrase it, if you know you have limiting beliefs, which most likely you do, when you first start out, I would actually say don't date. Because in that initial phase, as you're exploring what's really going on in there, there's going to be a lot of emotional movement happening underneath that. And that can feel very confusing for you. You might be at a high 1 second feeling like, yes, I can do this. And then you get on a date, you go, and then they can say 2 words. And before you know it, you're taking a nosedive back into this victim mentality, if I can't do this, back into the limiting belief. So I would really suggest first step is really taking the time to sit with it and explore it, understand it, but also most importantly, understanding that it's okay that you've allowed yourself to buy into that belief. I think we tend to be very hard on ourselves saying, oh, I shouldn't have done this. We regret it as if we've wasted all this time doing that. But if you hadn't experienced that, who's to say that you didn't protect yourself from having some heartache that really wasn't necessary? There's all sorts of reasons for why you had this, and they're completely valid. So acknowledge that. Give yourself, that kindness, that compassion. Then once you can really understand what your limiting belief is, start to, whether it's journaling or vision boarding, whatever works for you. I like journaling. I like to write out, okay, what's my limiting belief? Yeah. And as best as you can from the place of neutrality, just look at what the words say on the paper. Try not to read into the emotion. Just see what it says as if you're reading a book, right? and then analyze it. Say, if I were talking to someone else who said this to me, what advice would I give them? What are other possibilities that could have come from this? So, for example, if, let's say you had your example of, I didn't think I was pretty enough, people don't want to date me, and you ask yourself, okay, why did I have that thought? And maybe it's related to the fact of you've had experiences in the past where people didn't want to date. Right. So I'm writing this statement down. I'm not pretty enough because people have not wanted to date me in the past. Okay. So what are some other reasons? Why didn't they want to date me? Maybe they had something going on I didn't even know about. Because I don't have control of that. That's one option. The other option is maybe I was a different person back then than I am now. So just because it happened back then, why does that mean it's going to happen again? So we're basically trying to, all of these reasons, all these opportunities are disproving the fallacy more and more to where we can start to really break it down and really buy into other beliefs that are going to best serve us. So I mean, that's a bit lengthy, but the other thing because again, these are matters of the heart that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's hard to do this process. It does take time, which is why I recommend not dating during this phase, because you're not necessarily going to believe what you're telling yourself right away. Because, think about it. I might have told myself I'm not pretty enough for years.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily going to believe that I am pretty enough just overnight. I need to see that for myself and really feel it.
Yeah.
So really take the time, analyze, feel into it, and just take the time to really think to yourself, what are other reasons to disprove this? Actively trying to disprove that story that you've created in your mind, because the more you come up with reasons, the more you can really see it for yourself, the more you'll buy into it and start to shift the mindset to something more proactive.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's like, it's a timeline, right? So you do this, you do your journaling, you disprove it. And how do you get that switch? Because I know it doesn't happen overnight where you're kind of like one day you're journaling, you're like, okay, I'm going to believe I'm pretty. And then the next morning you wake up like you're Amy Schumer in that movie and, all is great and all is grand, right? There's a timeline and there's things you have to do. Is there anything else that you believe that we need? Oh, the dogs.
I tried so hard to get them to not do that. So I have an affair happening, apparently. He's serenading me to come out and play. I'm guessing somebody walked in the door and they're pretending like they are starving children and haven't been fed.
That's the cutest thing ever. I bet you don't think it's that cute though, hearing it every day.
Not cute at 3 a.m. sometimes, but they're babies. And my male husky, he says, "I love you." Go figure. And I'm hungry, so So
that's so cool. Well, as I was saying,
appearance.
Maybe because he likes what you said.
He must.
Great advice.
He must be really in tune, because I'll have moments where I'll sit here, I'm going through my own stuff, because I certainly don't have my shit together all the time. I'm crying and all that. He comes over and he starts singing. The second I'm better, he goes, "Okay, good," and he'll walk over to like the cabinet where he knows the treats are, and he'll sit there. He's like, "I did a good thing here. We have an agreement. I make you feel better if you feed me."
That's so awesome. Oh my God. I love it. I love
it. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No worries. I think it's the cutest thing ever. So I was saying, like, there's a timeline. Do you notice in your clients, or we should maybe talk about your story a little bit, how you got into this, but like where there was almost like a tipping point where people were like in this victim mindset, which I know is a very touchy word to say, but almost in that mindset. And then they become this not new person, but they become more empowered, I guess, to make
Yeah.
better decisions or just feel better about dating.
Yeah. And, like we've said, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and it varies person to person. And it really comes down to, whether or not there's some stuff that might have gone on in the past that maybe it's even deeper to the point of therapy. Um, because this is where we see the difference in the type of clientele I work with, or even my process versus someone who might see a therapist, is people that are working with coaches. The people that I see, they're in the mindset where they might have those limiting beliefs, things that create the anxiety, but the anxiety isn't severe to where they're completely stuck in it.
Yeah.
Or even, kind of taking steps backward. They're still making progress. And so people that I work with, when they're kind of looking through their beliefs, there's resistance to it. Yes, everyone has victim mentality, myself included. So we use the word, but we normalize it. So, and that's part of that process too, is learning to normalize that behavior, or accept it, as we say. Yeah. But there's a level of work that's put into this. I mean, it's not just you sit here and listen to me give you a motivational speech and, bam, bam, thank you, man, we're good. They're putting the work in. They're connecting to how badly they want this and why they want this. And that in itself is a drive to be more open to seeing those possibilities, or moving through the pain or talking through it or whatever it is their process is for them. So to summarize, it's basically, it's just the willingness to put in work and really being in tune with why you're here, why you're choosing to do this right now. Working with, having the support system, whether it's working with a coach or a group of friends or whoever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. I think support systems are super important too. Like, it's hard to go through those alone, and it's hard to sometimes it's hard to see your own limiting beliefs, right? Like, for me, in my example, I was blaming everything on my past relationships, and I wasn't even noticing it until my best friend was like, "You need to stop doing that because you're just creating the cycle over and over again." But I wasn't noticing it. So I found that having someone there with you going through the process, or a coach or something, kind of helps you see a different perspective, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was the captain of blaming everything on men. So and even my course that you brought up at the beginning, it's called the Adios A-Holes Assessment. So that was inspired by my own experience. I was the firm believer that all men were assholes. That was my belief, and I based it on all past relationships I had, that I was this great person, that I gave all of myself, I was passionate, I did everything, and yet I would still get dumped and still get treated like crap, and men would just try to sleep with me. And I had the list that would go on and on and on to explain why I thought men were assholes, that all the good ones are either gay or taken, otherwise they're crap, and there's no way I'm going to meet anyone. Well, I worked with a coach, and one day we were having the conversation, and I was very resistant towards it. I said, I can't see another way, because how am I going to change men? How am I going to change them from being shitty? Right? And she says, well, men are looking for love just as much as you are, right? And I go, I guess. Yeah, sure. I can buy that. She goes, okay, well, if we're just going to come to the assumption that all men are assholes, even though they're all also looking for love just as much as we are, there really isn't much opportunity to find a person, if you want it that badly, by thinking this way, right? And I went, yeah, I can see how it's problematic, unless I'm going to marry a gay man or something. But, it's problematic. So I went, okay, so I have to change this belief, because if I keep thinking this way, there's guaranteed I won't meet anyone. So I went, okay, if I can't exactly believe this yet, that, not all men are this way, I had to literally find just one itty bitty baby example. And the first thing that came to my mind was my grandfather. Granted, older man in my family, but I went, you know what? My grandfather was a genuinely nice, wonderful man, regardless of whether he was a married guy, whatever, right? And so she said, great. So why is he a good man? What are the qualities that make a good man? And so I started to realize, I went, it really has nothing to do with whether or not they're with a person. It's the qualities they possess, or it's just who they are. So I had to somehow, for me, that's just what made it click of, okay, there are good men in the world. I mean, I've already made the joke, there were gay men that are good, but that was just but point is, there are good men. It really has nothing to do with whether they're gay, straight, single, whatever. There are good men. And I had to figure out what to me really was a good man, and why is it that I was struggling to find them when it came to love. And it really turned out that it had nothing to do with men. It had everything to do with me and just the judgment that I led with. Because anytime you lead with a judgment, it's going to show. You're going to find reasons in your reality to make it true. So, hello, my fault. Cool. Let's change this. So the second I change it, it wasn't like, oh, men are fantastic. I had to find something that really made sense to me. And it was that, there are men out there that are respectable and that will respect me for who I am. I just have to figure out where. And that's just that little baby thing started like a domino effect. It just changed how I looked at people, how I even said hello to a man, whether it was for romantic reasons or just a general interaction.
I remember that moment where it was like, what? I'm not the problem. And then you kind of sort of realize that you are the problem. And you're like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a V8, like a sticker in the forehead, but also you're almost like, I could have changed this a long time ago. And it's almost then you become like, I don't know if this happened to you, but you're angry at yourself more than you're angry at the people you were dating, because you allowed yourself to feel a certain way or be treated a certain way, because you're finally realizing that you have more control over who you're dating, what you think, all of those things, right?
Yes. I mean, and that's where, again, we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
This is why I say, I have three principles that are like the foundation of what I coach in my process with my clients. And one of them is having compassion for yourself and for men around you, because the journey you've been on, your experiences you've had, they were there for a reason. You were not a bad person for choosing to go that route. There's nothing wrong with you because you missed the ball the first few times. You are absolutely perfect just as you are, no matter what that is. So that is the biggest piece that's really a hard pill to swallow, is acknowledging that this is the way it is, that in the past I made these choices and they might not seem right now, but at the moment they were right. They were the right choice for the time. But now we're in the present moment. So we can drop the past, we can drop the future, and we're just going to focus on the here and now and see what choices I want to make in this moment to shift everything forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we tend to do that. Like you said, we're so hard on ourselves that we tend to look back at our experiences or back at our upbringing, and then we base all of our future experiences on that versus just seeing it for what it is now and how we can make a change now. And that almost brings me to like, it's a mindset, right? It's the way that you think. It's the way that mindset is influenced by a lot of things. Like you said, media, parents, our friends, our surroundings. And I'm sure that mindset plays a huge role in all of this as well.
Yeah. I mean, your mind is central, but of course, so is your heart. So that's ironically my third pillar of all the things that are the foundation of what I coach, which is really learning to connect that, because we tend to either be fully logic and try to reason with ourselves and explain things to ourselves as to why we've done what we've done or why men have rejected us or whatever, or we completely lead with our hearts, where I'm sure we've all had the experiences, Lord knows I have, where my family goes, this person is totally wrong for you. Friends will tell me it's a bad person. And yet I'm still there. I am still connected because I love him, because we're just fully attached. So it's learning how to kind of get rid of all the chatter and just be present with yourself and say, my mind is telling me this right now. My heart's telling me this right now. What's happening with that? How can we connect this to where I'm really listening to all of me and I'm honoring myself, I'm honoring what I believe and what I hold to be very important and dear, to then move forward and make the best decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there, let's say, a specific mindset you have to attract that one person? I don't like saying that one person, because maybe in your lifetime you'll have five people, I should say. But, to attracting the next partner, is there a certain way that, not that you need to think, because I feel like I'm controlling people when I say that you need to think this way, but like, is there a mindset shift that needs to happen in order to do that, to attract someone special or the next partner?
That's a great question, because most people typically think that if I do this one thing, I'll be good. That's kind of the trap that people fall into when they read self-help books or listen to a coach or a podcast and they share their experience of this is how I did it. So then they figure, great, that's a success story. I'm going to follow that route and I'll be just as good, right? And then we sit here wondering, well, why didn't it work out for me? So the answer is yes, there is a mind shift that needs to happen, but no, there is no specific way that it can happen, because we're all different people. We all have different experiences. We all have different connections. We all interpret love and romance and sexuality, all of that completely different. The piece is just learning to explore yourself and how your mindset works, learning to understand your triggers and your vulnerabilities, and then really getting clarity on what that means for you and what direction you want to go in. Because once we've understood what's going on ourselves, we then, most people kind of just assume they know what they want without really exploring that. So it's understanding you, and then also understanding what you really are desiring in a relationship, and in, how do you want to show up in that relationship? If you have an argument with your partner, how do you want to experience that? Most people don't think about things like that. We have to understand how we function in those spaces, even in intimacy, in during sexual encounters. Nobody ever wants to think about that, and yet we all desire it like tenfold, right? So these sensitive, intimate pieces of ourselves, we have to be willing to normalize them and explore them and not be afraid to express them. Once you can do that, which is a huge take on, but at least start to get the wheels turning, you will see an instant shift in the people you meet and in the quality of the interaction that you have with a potential partner. And even if you start to, let's say you're with a partner and you're doing this work and you actually find that this is not the person for you, even then you will start to feel better. Not because you have to break up with someone, but because you can actually navigate through that kind of uncomfortable situation in a way that not only is positive for you, but positive for that person too.
It's like the wheels are turning in my head.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's so cool though. Like I know that a lot of the listeners, like the previous guests that I would have, talked a lot about that, the manifestation, the law of attraction, all of these things, right? And it's always done in terms of like, oh, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, law of attraction, you need to think positive thoughts all the time. But no one has really put it in terms like you have right now, where you're like, just by allowing yourself to sort of want what you want and admitting to yourself that that's what you want, things start to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the manifestation piece. It's just allowing yourself to feel good in the moment or be like, hey, this isn't what I want. I want sort of to try something new, or, you know. So do you think that, since we're on the subject of manifestation, essentially, do you think that that also is a huge part in attracting the person, or a huge part in, let's say, the dating world today, because we're so technological, right? We don't really think about the emotions and all the things that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, the key words you said, so we're talking about manifestation, and to some, that can mean a lot of different things to people who, depending on their familiarity with how that works or how they interpret that. And then you said the key ingredient, which is your feelings. Yeah. So to some people, they'll say, you know, for manifestation, they can say, oh, I'm going to manifest a job in 90 days, or I'm going to manifest a man in a year or something. I'll be married in a year. If you're not in true alignment with those feelings, those core desirable feelings, the manifestation essentially can mean nothing. It could, so, or in other words, you're not making a conscious-based choice or manifestation. You're making a fear-based choice or manifestation. You're focusing on the external goal, which again makes no difference as when we were talking before about, oh, if this on this pedestal, finding that man is going to equal my love and happiness. So we're leaving it all based on this thing. Alternatively, if you're making more of a conscious-based choice in that manifestation, if you're really aligning with, how do I want to feel when I meet this goal? I want to feel alive. I want to feel passion. I want to feel humor, whatever it is for you. Manifest that. That's kind of where I am. I never typically say I want to manifest that I'm going to meet a man in 6 months. I want to manifest humor, passion, desire, excitement. I want to manifest that, and that is what I want in my life, no matter what it looks like. That might look like a man, or that might look like a totally different experience. But without that connection to your heart with your head, without truly being connected to your core desired values and feelings, you might end up getting that item that you said you wanted in 6 months, but it might not fill you up the way that you thought it would.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting dynamic of it's learning to let go of the control of the external outcome and just really getting in tune with what you want internally to see all the options of how else you can manifest that for yourself.
I think honestly, it's the first time I'm speechless. Like, I'm just like, this is just so resonating with me right now. I'm like, I never thought about it that way. That's so interesting. I love it. I almost want you to repeat it again so it's really like ingrained in my skull.
I got you. I'll put it on a Post-it. I'll send it your way to Canada. You know what? Better yet, I will go there because I would like. We'll trade. Remember, I'll stick it on.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, but really, I mean, and this isn't to say, you know, because at the end of the day, people are going to hop on this and they're going, great, I'm going to learn my dating tips. I'm going to go meet someone now. Yes, and you know, if you're here to learn, you know, what are my cheat sheet rules of how to get someone, that's not what this is. But it's also not to say that, you know, you're not capable of getting that. You absolutely are. And this is the key to do that. But it's not about focusing on that. It's about focusing on you. Because love, intimacy, desire, it all starts with you. So you have to learn to cultivate that within yourself before you can attract and draw someone in to feel that with you.
Yeah. You think that by doing that, that people will relieve a lot of the anxiety around dating, or like any type of negative emotion that comes from it?
Absolutely. It's when you release the control of the outcome, essentially, there's a certain reassurance and freedom in that, because, and I could say best from, you know, from my personal example, is when I finally found that You know, I was done with the assumption of men being assholes. And I knew that I wanted to be with someone because I wanted to feel that excitement and desire. And I wanted to be able to be spontaneous and, you know, have someone that complemented that. I set the intention for knowing I'm going to create a life of all these things and that there will be someone there.
Yeah.
So I just trust that. And I trust myself to know that I'm going to make choices that will ultimately lead me there. As long as I still desire that, truly desire that, because that can also shift as we change as people. But if in the moment I'm still trusting that's going to happen, that's all I need to know. So any interaction I have, I'm going to value myself and I'm going to know I'm going to meet someone, whether it's you right now, who I'm on this date with, doesn't matter. You might be, you might not be. Either way, great, because I'm going to find that person.
Yeah.
I have faith in myself, and I know that I am going to honor my choices to get what I want because I deserve them and I want them. And that's really all it is. And when you have that shift, and you know, people talk about the word confidence gets thrown out so much, and it is confidence, but it's more than that too. You're embodying this version of yourself that really is at its best, the person that you desire to be, and people are drawn into that. It's infectious when you finally just take that stress off, are able to really release the anxiety and just be there. People really are drawn to that, especially now.
I'm seriously just like, we should have this conversation when I was single like a year ago.
I mean, I'm here, I'm always around, but you know, even I will say this is very powerful work to do even in couples. I do work with couples, and I have worked with couples. Any really, I'm getting tongue-tied because I get so excited about this. Any relationship dynamic can ultimately do this work. In all seriousness, the way that I actually was introduced to coaching had nothing to do with dating and relationships. It started with me and my relationship with my dad. So, and that's where I was introduced to this. And that relationship was so transformative that I learned to apply the same principles in other areas of my life, whether it was my health, whether it was work, whether it was with my friends, and with love. It all interconnects. So you'll see that when you start to really play around with your mindset, that it's intertwined. Like you will wake up in the morning and you've probably had a better night's sleep because you've been able to really deal with this. You'll find more motivated to eat better if you want to, or to have better quality friendships. Your family life might feel more enriched. I mean, it's powerful work when you really set yourself in that direction.
In that path.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's very true though, right? Like regardless of having a romantic relationship or a family relationship or just a relationship with yourself, it all starts with you, regardless of which relationships you want to have with people.
Yeah. One of my favorite coaches to follow, I mean, she's brilliant, is Danielle Laporte, core desired. She does desire mapping, and talks about core desired feelings. And I touched on it earlier. And it's literally like a workbook. So if you haven't done it, I highly suggest it. But you work through that no matter what your goal is in life, in business, in money, in anything, as long as you connect to that emotion of what's fueling that desire, you can obtain anything you want, essentially. It's just leading with that as opposed to leading with the external goal first. It's working backwards. But you can literally do it in any aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's so cool. For those of you that are listening, if you have any questions, now would be the time to pop them in the comments. And if you are watching the replay, you can definitely put in the comments as well. I'm sure Jenna or myself will be looking at it periodically if you guys have any questions. But I asked this question to everyone. I got it off Lewis Howe's podcast. I need to stop saying that because every webinar I say it and people are like, yeah, we know, Steph, this is where you got it. But I don't want to like take any credit for this question. So Since you deal more with women, right? So I'm going to ask this question towards them. So what is the one question you wished women asked you or asked themselves more towards this subject?
Oh, what question do I wish they asked more?
Mm-hmm.
That's such a loaded one for this topic. Ooh, okay.
The first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, I mean, because for the hardest thing to get past is always kind of that precondition of it being out of their control. So I wish they would ask simply, very simply, what can I do to better my situation?
Yeah.
Because everyone always wants the quick fix.
Yeah.
Because it's easy and it's painless. But it's about the willingness to put in the work to do it. So I would definitely say, what is it that I could do to better this? Really taking that ownership and that responsibility.
I love it. I love it because I have this. I ask myself that question too. Like, if someone were to ask me this question, what would I answer? And it's along those lines too. Like, how can I become the better version of myself? Like, what is the next step to becoming that? Right? Because I feel like as a society now, we don't take ownership. Like, unfortunately, I don't know if it's just the millennial generation. I don't know if it's society in general, but we don't take ownership for our lives. We blame other people. We say it's their fault. We look, oh, it's because of social media. Oh, I'm too much on my phone. Oh, I'm not dating anyone because it's all online. Like, we all have all these excuses of why it's not working for us because of other people, but rarely do we like look at ourselves and are like, okay, what can I do now to change the situation?
Yeah. Well, that's because looking at ourselves is terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, none of us want to admit that we have faults or flaws unless we've done a shit ton of work on ourselves. And that's okay. Some people never even get to that point because it's just too terrifying to look in the mirror sometimes. But you get there. You have a support system, and you can do
it. You can, for sure. Do you believe that there's anything else that ladies or gentlemen need to know in regards to relationships, dating, online dating, anxiety in dating, anything that you can think of that can help our listeners that are going through this?
Sign up for my coaching. And, I mean, there is an infinite amount of things that you can learn. And I think, that in itself is a lesson. It's knowing that relationships do take work. They are not something that just you find your match and it's smooth sailing the whole way. And, so it's being willing to put in that time. It's knowing that even if you think you've found your person and you're one and you've figured that out for yourself, you are constantly going to change how you feel, how you view the world in your relationship. And so it's just learning to constantly kind of stimulate that self-awareness factor and just really be observant of tongue-tied of what's going on around you and learning to have fun with it. It's matters of the heart and it's a big deal, but the whole point is to enjoy it. So start living today as if you've already obtained it. You don't have to do it blindly, of course. Don't fake it till you make it, but really start to work on how you want to live that life, this desire, those feelings that you're looking to achieve. Start finding how you can live them right here, right now, even if it's the smallest piece. Just keep building and working that muscle to where eventually that person will already be there and you're already experiencing everything that you're looking to experience. They're just going to walk this path alongside you.
I love it. I love every second of that. You've been such an asset to this. I'm so passionate about this subject because it was the root of my anxiety. My anxiety was solely created because I was so set on like, oh my God, I'm 22. I haven't been on a real date. Oh my God, I just like, it was just like my whole world was centered on being with the one person. And it created so much chaos. And I'm like, now that I've found the person, even if I would still be single, looking back, I'm like, why was that so important? Like, why was that such a key factor in my happiness, right? Like you mentioned before, we kind of put, if we find the one, we'll be happy. And it's when I decided to be happy single that I found the one, right? Like that, or the one for now. Like, I don't know what the future holds, right? So it's, it's crazy how when you make that perspective shift, everything changes.
Yeah. And it's, again, it looks different for everybody, but when you just choose to really honor and acknowledge how you want to feel and how you want to be, it really turns your world upside down for the better.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. Thank you, Jenna. So